happened because I knew about the carp away back in 2016 when a guy caught it away back at 32 pound in weight, and that caught my eye of it. And I actually didn't realise at one stage that the lake was only 15 minutes away from my house. So I decided to that time to go and have a look and see what the water was at. So I went, had a look back then at 2016 roughly and checked out what it looked like. But I had my plans on elsewhere at the time, and I wanted to develop my skills in carp fishing, which I needed to, because I felt like going for a target specimen carp like that, I needed to make sure. So I left it for a while, and then I heard it came back out again in 2020 at 35 pound. So that really did catch my eye, because I was like, right, it looks like it's coming out every 4 years. It's not a carp that comes out all the time. The lake itself is only 11 acres. It's got only 3 to 4 carp maximum, they say, in it, and I was able to catch 2 of them, the prize being paw. Now, paw is the only carp in Scotland that's got a name. There is bigger carp there. The Scottish record is right now at 43 from another lake, but I always went after just this fish because it was in my local area. It was 50 minutes from my house. So 2020, it came upon by a guy called Kieran. He had it at 35. So that was me. I was like, right, it's time to think about it. So 4 years later, 2024, we're here. I started off, I walked down in late February. So this is the loch, over 11 acres in size. I had also done a bit of Google Maps, check and see if I could see anything in location, because there's a lot of reeds that come out, so I had to make sure how far the reed bed went out, because at that time in February in Scotland, nothing's grown yet, it's all dead. So I took that time and I went round in February, looked about the areas, decided how I was going to approach it, because I wanted to keep away from the bank where all the anglers are. There's pike anglers, there's bream anglers, there's just day out tickets, there's kids. The kids go around drinking out there at the weekends, they jump into the water in the summertime. I knew all that. The car parking area, I had to make sure that was okay, because I heard the horror stories of cars getting broken into and things like that. And so I had to make sure I had everything right. So February was a day of just going out a few times, checking it out. I went out with the little deeper on my 9-foot rod. Always carry a little 9-foot rod for the leading about, or the deeper. So I chucked the deeper about. I checked what the area was like and what it looked like to it, and then I got right into the baiting. So February came and went. I knew the area I was going to go. It was a lot of work. I had to put the chest waders on every time I went there, because I had to wade through a boggy part and then sit up onto a little island. It wasn't the big island it was at, it was just off it. So I had to approach that by always going by the chest waders and getting onto that. So I had to make sure I was going to be safe every time I was going there because of the levels of the water. So that was all set in stone. So then I went for the baiting. Now I know it is absolutely plagued with bream. Everybody tells you about the stories. I've seen the £100 weights coming out, do you know what I mean, over a day session for some of the bream anglers. So I knew this is going to be a task and a half, because you're looking for 3 or 4 carp in 11 acres with about, I don't know, 150, 200 bream or something like that in the lake. I don't know how many it was. So I started off looking into everything, and I decided I was going to bring the bream into my area. I wanted them to start clearing off the area, because I knew the bottom had a lot of leaf matter. I knew it was quite silty in areas. There was right tight, we found some gravelly spots, later on I'll tell you about that bit. So I started off with the maize and the hemp and the pellet, typical stuff you're going to bring the bream in with. So 5 kilo bags went out, and that's what I approached with in March. I started chucking 5 kilo bags out over the areas. A trickle of boilies, not a lot. I was measuring it at half a kilo at a time, bringing them with me, taking them out. So I was scattering a lot of that. So I kept doing that for the full of March, because our temperatures in Scotland take a lot longer to heat up. So I had that to think about too. I knew the carp weren't right on the munch because I have my own water, and I was checking the carp because they're not that far apart. So I was checking how many bites were coming out, and then I started to feel like, right, now's the time to actually go for the carp. So I went with that approach. So I baited up, came to late March, maybe the middle to late March, and I decided, right, I'm going to get my day sessions in. So that's what I started off. No night sessions yet, it was just a couple of day sessions. So we started with the day sessions. 3 rods went out. All in 9 foot of water. We were all on the Snowman rig, my typical blowback rig. I do not change when I'm going after carp like this. I think they're riggy. I don't think they're shy of the rigs because they don't see enough bait. So that was my plan. So I did the day session. What happened? Bream. But the rigs were working, and I knew the fish were in the area. So my tactic was to rein back on all the pellet and maize and start introducing a little bit more boilie work. So the boilies went up to a kilo at a time, but it was only a kilo over 3 spots. So I started introducing, every time I was going fishing, I was introducing a little bit of boilie over the top, and I started reducing the amount of maize and hemp I was using. I wasn't going to take it completely away because I still needed to get the bream coming into area and all the fish, because I knew the carp will come eventually around that area. Now, the opposite bank gets a lot of attention, as I said earlier, and I started to spot the carp on the opposite bank. So I was like, all right, have I made the move right? I wasn't sure, but I decided to stick the area because you have to stick to your guns. You have to stick to the area you're fishing when you're going after a carp. If you start playing mind games with yourself, you're totally lost, and then you'll lose interest or anything like that. So I started introducing the boilies. I started to see a couple of carp show, which people said you don't see at Eggy, but if you're there at the right time, you are going to see them. And my time was always at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. You had to, from the darkness, I used to finish work, go over there, head torch on, and just stand about watching it when I was pre-baiting. So I started to see the carp showing, so that's why the boilies started to go out a lot more. And then it came, a whole of April went by, and I decided late into April the temperatures were increasing in Scotland, and I thought to myself, right, it's time to do the old nighters. So I did my first all-nighter. That went really quiet right through the whole night. I didn't even have any bream, which was quite shocking. So I was like wondering what was going on, because I knew they were catching the opposite side. So I thought to myself, right, I need to have a wee look here. So because 3 days before that, I had chucked a kilo of boilies right across the whole area. So because I hadn't caught even a bream, I was wondering to myself, right, what has happened to my area? So I decided to get my baiting pole out. Now I've got an underwater camera that is done by cable. So I'd done a wee notch in the on the baiting spoon, and so I could lay the cable onto it, and I fed the baiting pole out, dropped the camera down, and I started panning over 2 areas that I could get to. The third rod was quite far out on a plateau of 6 foot. The 2 rods in front of me were on 9 feet of water, which was, you had reeds you could walk into, and it's straight down into 9 foot. So I went with the underwater camera, went down and looked, and there it was. My boilies were still there after 3 or 4 days, and I was worried that I had started maybe introducing too much bait, even though I was weighing out a kilo at a time. I was wondering if I was doing it too many times. Maybe I was doing it twice, the start of the week and at the end of the week. And I was like, right, have I done this wrong? So what I decided to do was re-enter one day, and then I went back with a full 5 kilo of hemp and maize and absolutely nailed the whole area. And I left it for a full week and I didn't go near it. And I thought to myself, I'm going to make sure that I've done this right by introducing a lot more bait, a lot more hemp. I thought I'll bring the bream in and they'll clear the whole area. So I went back a full week later, and we were going into probably into the start of May. Went with the baiting pole again with the underwater camera, checked it, bait's all gone. Even the boilies had gone. The bream had come back, and it was because of the maize. There was more maize in there. So I thought to myself, right, what do I do next? Do I keep introducing the maize and the hemp, or do I stick with the boilies? Because at the end of the day, when you're after a big carp, you just start putting all the boilies in. I've always done it that way, and I thought to myself, right, I need to make sure the bait's getting eaten. I don't want any rotten bait lying on the ground. I want to make sure it's clear. So I thought to myself, I'll have one more shot at trickling a bit of bait in, but I'll do it on the day I fish. So May comes, May time's around, and I'm in May. I can't remember, I think it was the 12th of May I went up, and my left hand rod I chucked out and catapulted a load of boilies over the top of it, and then it was about 2 catapults worth, I don't know how many boilies, 20 odd boilies round it. Done it on all 3 rods, sat back, and it was going to be my first overnighter there, a full 24 hours in May, first one. The rod tears off at 10:30. Now I arrived at 4:30 in the morning, the rod tears off, left hand one, it screams off, and I'm like, that's not a bream, because bream don't do that. So I went and picked up the rod, and there you go. I had the first carp out of Eglinton Country Park, and it was a 23-pound common. Now, for a couple of old warriors, and I've got myself one, the common. She's angry. This common hasn't been seen or heard of since 2016, and it came out at £16. So I was really chuffed to get a fish that hadn't been out for a very long time. So it was really nice to see that common. So that made myself a lot happier, because I thought, right, they are coming to just boilie, but sometimes I might have to just put a bit of maize in to clear the spots up before I turn up. So I was well chuffed. I had the first carp on the bank, and it was the common. It wasn't the common that hangs about with Paul, because Paul hangs about with another common that's called Discard Common. Can't remember the weights of that one. Nobody's seen it since 2020, because it came out 45 minutes after Paul was caught from the last guy. But I was really happy to get that one. So that was the one done. So I knew the following week I was going straight back after my work. Now, normally I go weekdays, because I do not go near the place at the weekend, because of the reasons of the guys go up there and drink away and booze and have the right good fun, like we all did back then, like we're all still doing, I suppose. So I decided I was going to go the next week, and but I ended up going on a Saturday. The reason I went on the Saturday because it was my daughter's 18th birthday, and she had all her pals around the house, and I was not hanging about there. So my plan was to get the wife to drop me off in the van, drop all the gear off. So I was a bit reluctant, because I came off night shift that morning and I didn't arrive till about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was like, I'm going to be seen, because everything I'd done over there was like black ops. Nobody's seen me. I went in the pitch black, I set up in the pitch black, I left in the pitch black, I baited up in the darkness, I baited up at 5:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, all kinds of things like that, because I didn't see my area. I didn't want anybody to know I was doing this. See, when everybody catches wind, they all start snooping about, and I did not want that. So Saturday came, and I was the wife dropped me off. I was in the car park. I set all the stuff out, and I started marching over to the lake. What happens? Anglers are coming by me. Oh, are you going fishing for carp? I'm like, this and that. Yeah, I'm just going to see what there is. And they're like, right. So I asked them, is the lake busy? Is the loch busy? I think, and everyone and the guys were like, no, it's totally dead now. So I was like, yes, I'm going to get up there and nobody's going to see me. So I get marching to the lake, and jumps over the little bit of burn I've got to with all my stuff, lift the fuel barrel over, put all the stuff back on it, and then push it through a deer track. Crossing this with all your gear is a lot of work. Oh, sweating. Started pushing it through the deer track, looks to my left, anglers all the way up left hand side banking. I'm like, right, I thought they said everybody was gone, but no, they were there. So I was like, bugger. So I kept rushing through behind all the trees, rushing right round to the corner, lifted all the stuff over the bog, set up, and then I was there for about 2:30, 3 o'clock, and I just set up all the rods and set up everything against my bivvy and just waited till 5:30, 6 o'clock till they all left. I knew they'd leave because the football was on that night. So I knew like they're going to disappear and watch the game. Rangers or Celtic, I think I was playing at that point in time. I can't remember, but typical Scotland. I don't follow football, but everybody was away. So 6 o'clock came and I was like, right, nobody's here. So chest waders on. Now my rods are all out in the lake because of the reeds. The reeds are about 11 foot long. So I made a little gap in the reeds where my rods were sat. Saturday night for me. Eggy Park. The left-hand rod was chucked back out onto plateau where I caught the common. The middle rod was just literally rod tipped down in front of me because I'd seen carp in that area roll right in front of me. The day I caught the common, there was another carp had rolled that I forgot to say that rolled there previous. So I thought I'm going to make sure I put a rig back on that. So I put the rig back on that bit area, and the middle rod was further down there. They all went out. Boilies all on top of them, sat back, and this was about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. I was sat there. I ended up getting a cup of tea, as I always do. I'm stood there watching the water, and in the middle rod, there was a big carp just went like that over the top. And I was like, Jesus, they're right here in front of me. So I was like, and I knew what I'd seen. I knew it was a mirror that rolled in front of me. But I was like, nah, was that actually him? Because I'd heard about a 17, 18 pound mirror that was in there. I was like, is that him? But I wasn't sure. So 8:30 went by, 9:30 went by, and I'm like, nah, nothing's going to happen here. It's like over an hour. So I was like, I'm going to have another cup of tea, and then I'm going to hit the sack and get to the bed. So I sat there, typical, every angler knows it. You get your last cup of tea. I'm just about to take the first mouthful of it. The middle rod absolutely goes on to meltdown, and I mean meltdown. The butt, it comes off the butt grip. The reel smashed into the middle delcom, and I was like, I'm going to lose this rod because I'd make sure it wasn't that loose of a clutch. So I jumps into the water. The tea goes everywhere. The cup flies everywhere. And it starts fighting this fish, and it started peeling line, and I'm like, right, this is a big carp. Now I heard the stories of paw, like most of the big fish that I've heard in Scotland, that they tear off and they just do not stop. Now this one charged off, and I mean charged. So I was playing it, and I just knew to myself, I knew what I had on, but that way you're just like, no, keep out your head, just concentrate on what you got to do. So I was sat there playing this fish, and then I got to a stage where I started to bring it in, and it was coming in, and I went for the net. I looked round, the net was too far behind me, so I had to walk back, grab the net, because I was in that much of a panic when it tore off. Grabbed the net, got the net, brought it to me, and I started playing them again. Now I cut little channels out in every bit where the rods were, so the lines would lie in between the reeds. So I was able to kind of shuffle myself out, but I started to get only about an inch off my chest waders, and I'm like, right, I need to stop now. So I'll start there, still playing paw, and then I reached out with the net, and he came up onto his side, and I knew he'd been beaten. So I went to put him into the net, but I couldn't get the net down deep enough because of the weed and the triangle part of it, so it was forcing up with the weed, so I couldn't get the net down. So I was like, right, I'm going to have to just bite the bullet. So I reached straight into the water, water's pouring into the chest waders, dips the net, puts him into the net, and I just was like, oh yes. But at that split second, I was like, right, it's definitely a mirror, but is it paw? I knew it was paw, but you were like, I looked down at the net, looked inside the net, and there he was. I could see the print of paw on the side of him. And he's got these scales that look like paw prints. That's why he was named Paw. I've known of him. I've seen pictures of him way back in 2003 at 22 pound in weight and things like that. So I'd always been watching him, and I just looked into this net, and there he was. Paw had finally came to my net. As you, the paw mark. That split second, was it you? Look up here now, look up here. Scotland, and then maybe I have to wait. Like paw, it's a target, it's what I wanted. Turn it around and let you see the paw mark. She's old, there's down there. Just sling it, go straight back in the water. I've heard of all the lads that it took a year and a half, 2 years to catch them. I couldn't believe it took me only 8 weeks to catch paw, and it was about 3 or 4 sessions, night sessions all in with a couple of day sessions. I couldn't believe I'd done it that quickly in May, and then I was at that stage now, like, that's the campaign done in May, and it was quite nice to finish in May, roughly around my birthday, as usual, with a beautiful carp. And I weighed them, and they came in at 36 pounds and 2 ounces. Now, what did I do next? Well, there's other things. There's the Scottish record in Scotland at Castle Loch. Will I be going there? Probably. I'd done it before, I tried Castle before, and it's a beautiful area, and I'll definitely be doing that. Paw was an absolute brilliant achievement for myself, and it made my year. It will always make my year as being that target fish. Doesn't matter what weight they are, I just love to go for the targets, and that was what I went for. We'll see what happens next, and we'll see what we get next year in 2025. I hope you enjoyed the little story. I probably will be subtitles for everybody else because nobody understands the Scottish language, do they? And I hope you all have a great time. Thanks very much. Cheers.